All right, here we go. Excuse me, mouse. Don't you dare freeze on me. Don't do it. Uh, I told you not to do it. Mute. Edit. Don't start. Don't start this on me. Uh, Live on. Even though the subject matter is gonna get it flagged anyways. Yeah, blah blah blah. So primarily just gonna be super chats if there are any. Oh, already got people in. All right, that's ready. Live chat set up. Google Earth. Come on. All right, there we go. Get out of the way. Okay. What else did I need to have ready? Oh, I could always check for more stuff while we're waiting. Don't don't actually like follow or subscribe to this person. They're uh not all that subtle about the fact that they want all the Palestinians to die. So I don't actually follow them. I do go to their feed because they do post like actual accurate information updates, and they redact things when stuff turns out to be not true or not confirmed. But I don't actually follow them, nor would I like subscribe to them or anything, because they're uh, used to be less overt about it, but now that like the ethnic cleansing is like actually happening, they're like kind of like all behind it. Anything else from Noel? A much better, less genocide supporting person. Right? Wow, that was fast. I'm assuming that title draws everybody in. So, like I said, or like usual, start for real, around 10 minutes. So about 7 minutes from now, anybody who's watching the recording, so you can skip the next 7 minutes if you want. I'll still like talk about and look at stuff during that time frame, but we won't start until then. Yeah, for anyone who's here already, as the title implies, uh, actually I should check to see if they finally did update this data. But as the title implies, humanity is evil inherently. I didn't just learn that; I've known that for quite a while. And no data updates, as I've spent the past week uh, inundated with just seeing comment after comment of people aimed either at Israelis or at Palestinians about about how insert group here doesn't deserve to live. Animals such animalistic people such as this are subhuman and they don't deserve to have basic necessities. I hope they all die. Stuff of the sort, and it's gotten. I think I've gotten in excess of like probably 3 or 4 thousand of those. So like I was already aware that humanity is inherently evil, but now it's more like when it's this much and it's this overt, starting to realize that I've never been in a neutral sea when I've been walking around. Like you people are actually all around me. Like I'm actually anytime I go anywhere, which isn't that often, I'm all these, otherwise I think of as, just generically average people. Y'all are thinking something like this, which is really, uh, really just no. Go lock your. You need to go lock yourself in a room for a while. Uh, oh yeah, it's Friday. I forgot. I'm thinking it's Thursday, but I'm way out of schedule. So it's Friday. So actually, trading's frozen. So all the prices are going to be frozen. Did we get any final updates from the Oil and Gas Journal before stopping for the weekend? No. Okay. So nothing else new on that end. I do feel like I'm forgetting something. There was one other thing I wanted to recheck before we started stuff. Oh, I also would want to actually have the stream stuff ready. And I should open another one of these actually. Open in would be new window. Okay, yeah, it is new window. Was it in downloads? Let me find it real quick. Oh no, yeah, I was just gonna mention that stuff. All right, let's see. Uh, all right, Jolly, dial it down or you're getting banned. I am far, far from being in the mood. Actually, I already blocked and banned one of my $5 patrons the other day. So there is no restraint from me to be had in that regard. And you got anything for me? No, just the Azeri preparation stuff. Is Josh here yet? No. Well, hold on. Did my text actually send when I sent it to him? Let me check that. Yes, it did. Okay. All right. Are we at 10 minutes? Almost. Oh, that was probably a reply. Or it wasn't. My phone just decided it wanted to make a sound for no reason. Uh, oh, yeah. I guess spend the last minute while we're on this. So, again, for anybody who is not aware, I've begun doing a bunch of non-video stuff, compiling resources and things, maps and graphs and stuff that you guys can look at and use if you want to. For starters, I've made a Google Doc with a bunch of maps that I created to show what areas of each country and or region have versus have not been explored for oil and gas. For example, here's Algeria. Gray shaded areas are areas that would not or cannot bear hydrocarbons or cannot bear oil and gas at least. And the regular bright unshaded areas have not been explored. Red shaded areas have been explored. So I'm getting close to having every country and region so far, at least that have had anything start in them yet. And also keep in mind that not all potential oil and gas bearing space is equal. So, for example, let's go to Bolivia. Bolivia, there we go. So, this is Bolivia, and the oil and gas bearing region, places in Bolivia that could bear oil and gas, is about 4 times as much as in Ecuador. However, despite being 4 times that size, uh, or at least the oil and gas bearing area that has been explored in Bolivia is equivocally about twice the size of the oil and gas bearing area of Ecuador. However, all of that space in Bolivia only ended up being enough to yield enough oil to get Bolivia up to a peak of about like 120 or 130,000 barrels a day, whereas the oil and gas bearing area of Ecuador, despite being half the size of Bolivia's red shaded area, was enough to get Ecuador up to a total peak of 550,000 barrels per day. So, again, keep in mind that that like all the different areas are like not they're not even with each other in terms of how much that you're going to find, because the topography and geography of the area is one thing that indicates to you that the setup is there for there to be oil and gas. But then on top of that, you also need to look at the geology, the actual formation of the rock layers themselves in the ground. Once you have found an area or a basin that has the type of ground that could contain oil and gas, you have to then also consider the geology, and so like the types of rock layers and stuff. And in Ecuador, uh, the geology on top of the topography is really good, whereas for Peru and Bolivia, despite being right next to Ecuador in Peru's case, and then Bolivia is a bit farther away, but despite being, or at least to the initial glance, looking similar, the geology part for Peru and Bolivia absolutely sucks. So that's why Peru and Bolivia, despite their potential oil and gas bearing areas being much larger than the entire country of Ecuador, ended up having much less oil and gas than tiny little Ecuador did. But so I have that. I have those up. Actually, here I'll show you Google Docs. I have posted these links several times. So, yeah, there's this one. This is the exhausted areas. And I also have countries that have already been completely explored and countries that effectively would have or never had any oil. Those lists aren't even entirely complete yet, but I have many countries and regions done so far on here. So you can look at those. And also, I've now started doing these for you guys as well. Over time, I couldn't make actual pyramids, so I made a regular graph and then just flipped it 90 degrees. But I've done births, and the red slash pink is deaths plus migration. So if a country has more outbound migration, that makes the red numbers higher. If it has more inbound migration, it makes the red numbers less. So I've been starting to make these for you guys as well, these demographic overlay charts. So you can see Indonesia birth rates flattened out for a while and have started coming in as their fertility rate is at like 1.7. And total deaths plus outbound migration has now started. You can see the linear trend heading this way, and they're going to meet within like a decade and a half or so. And have Mexico as well. Number of births in particular dropping pretty fast. Pakistan, and the one other I've put in so far is India. And I am working on the others. Don't worry, I'm not going to stop at just 4 countries. But so I keep putting those links up for you guys to go in and see those docs and all those graphs and everything if you want. Let's see, right? No updates. Again, don't actually follow or subscribe to this person. Uh, Racism, genocide supporting, blah blah blah. Uh, does give accurate, like, on the dot timing information and stuff for the most part, but you know, once this stuff started a week ago, they immediately betrayed my trust in them as a person, at least, uh, as separating the information, like the information provision from the person. The person behind this immediately like self-condemned themselves to me because they're like, yeah, let's go kill the Palestinians, blah blah blah. All right, what do we have here? All right, all right. You're in a timeout. I'll give you I'm gonna believe your claim that you're currently intoxicated, and I'll untime out you at the end of the stream. But so, officially starting now. So, for those who are unaware somehow, I highly doubt that you are unaware, but if you are somehow unaware, another one has gone off, and another one is just going for it. And actually, before we even go into the specific details, how do I know that it's a just going for it scenario? Uh, well, we have the quote from Netanyahu himself. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, this was a direct quote from his speech. Uh, Gaza is only the beginning. Okay, wonderful, awesome. You know, just like the whole Azerbaijan Armenia thing, where Aliyev, the dictator of Azerbaijan, said, Nagorno Karabakh was only the beginning. All of Armenia is actually historic Azerbaijani lands, and they will come back to us. So apparently, according to Netanyahu, Gaza is only the beginning. Great, awesome, wonderful. This is awesome. Everybody just wants to die, or wants everybody else to die, really. So, for anyone who's not aware, a week ago, uh, suddenly, within one day, about 3,000 rockets came out of Gaza. In terms of like how quickly it was like the largest onslaught ever. They hit all over the place. 2,500 Hamas militants were able to cross over and did a bunch of massacres everywhere. Eventually, obviously, got engaged by the IDF. About the casualty trade-off ended up being 300 dead IDF troops, 1,500 dead Hamas troops, with about 1,000 of the original 2,500 returning into Gaza, with a few hundred hostages of various nationalities, uh, not just Israelis, but also Americans, British, some Russians, and for some reason, they really wanted to capture a bunch of Thai and Nepali people. Though those were some of the ones they really went to grab, but they retreated back in and started launching some more rockets. And as per usual, Israel's response was, uh, you know, highly targeted but effectively indiscriminate bombing. And so the rocket and bombing back and forths, plus the on ground massacre stuff on the first day, have gotten us to a point now of Palestinian and Israeli slash other nationalities. Civilian deaths combined are now in excess of 3,000 over the last week. Plus then 1,500 dead Hamas troops, about 300 dead IDF troops, and also there's been some stuff on the Syrian and Lebanese border, but it hasn't really like gone anywhere yet. Hezbollah says they will go all in if Israel actually does go into Gaza, which effectively at this point it looks 100% like they're going to, although they have delayed it because in a thin line of light for humanity, when they announced that 1 million people in the upper half of Gaza had 24 hours to move to the southern half of Gaza immediately, or they were going to die. Actually, most nations, and even quietly, not publicly, the U.S., to my shock, told Israel that that's kind of unacceptable and insane. Maybe you should call that off for a day or two. And so Israel actually called it off for a day or two. And it was initially expected and most likely planned that they were going to roll in tonight, but now it looks like they postponed that until sometime Sunday. But they have like full onslaught readiness surrounding the area. Roughly 300,000 soldiers. I don't know what amount of their armored force and vehicles. They only have 500 Merkava tanks. I know there's at least 150, probably 200 there ready, and I don't know their exact counts of other armored vehicles and things. I know their Air Force numbers and stuff, but they also have some amount of force up north just in case something happens. And so uh, this is effectively their or Netanyahu's long dreamed of ethnic cleansing. So effectively, force the northern population of Gaza to, evacuate to the southern half. Then they're going to invade, to quote unquote purge Hamas. And I mean, they'll do that, but in reality, the whole aim is kind of just to level the northern half of Gaza, so then they can bulldoze it later. And the 1 million Palestinians who they forced into the southern half will just have to sit there and squalor afterwards, which is like the whole point. I'm not saying I'm not referring to like the general population of Israel wanting such, but Netanyahu, he absolutely does. He's out of his mind. I mean, he's actually he's tried for like actual fascism and everything, and dictatorial power concentration, because he was doing multiple things that ended up getting like, in a country of only 10 million people, getting nearly 2 million people on the streets protesting and rioting against him for last year. If anyone remembers, he was trying to just like do away with Israel's Supreme Court and make it so that all pertinent application of law decisions would be his to make, and so there wouldn't be like a Supreme Court involved with anything. So he actually has like pretty blatantly tried for it already. Thankfully, he failed for the time being, at least. I'm gonna have to check chat way more often. This stream in particular. Blah blah blah. Like this. Oh, Josh is here. Uh, Israeli intelligence letting things happen. That idea has gone around. Uh, and that's not something I could really pin down, because while again Netanyahu would want this to happen because this galvanizes the population in his favor and gets them like bloodthirsty, so they'll be behind him for everything. You have to remember, like, the people then beneath him in the military and in the various like departments who would be aware of things but letting it happen. They're like, they aren't Netanyahu. They actually like have like families and relatives and everything who would potentially be caught up in this. So, you'd have to really pull hard to like convince them to willingly let it happen. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility, but let me check my number stuff. Yeah, so again, numbers as it stands, just over 3,000 dead civilians, Palestinian and Israeli combined, about 300 dead IDF troops, 1,500 dead Hamas troops, uh, four four damaged Apache attack helicopters. Israel has 48. Four were damaged conducting strikes in the Gaza Strip by ground fire, basically just small arms fire, which a little bit isn't too much, but it can start to accrue damage to some more fragile critical portions of the helicopter. So four Apaches were damaged in the fighting, and but Israel maintains like military stuff at U.S. cycling times and standards. So those would whatever damage was done will likely be repairable, and the helicopters combat serviceable again within 1 to 2 months. Uh, Israel also lost confirmed. Hamas makes much larger claims, but Israel did confirmed lose two Merkava tanks, which are relatively on par with the Abrams in that in tank versus tank combat and versus anti-tank munitions, like the Abrams, they are invincible. However, once you leave tank versus tank combat and or tank versus infantry slash tank munitions combat, then they become not invincible. An artillery shell landing on them would take them out, or in this case, them being parked there near the border and the Hamas militants happening upon like the small like operational readiness outpost and just opening the hatches on the tanks and putting explosives on the inside and detonating the explosives. Yes, that will also take them out if you happen upon a situation where you're able to do that. So technically, they don't have 500 tanks anymore. Technically, they now have 498. But regardless, they have expended a lot of Iron Dome ammunition, though, which then is part of the stuff that draws me over into the notes I took down for myself. Of since everyone keeps floating around different theories about this being like a massive plan, and with like Iran on top of everything. So speculation wise, things do look more on the things do look more like this was primarily just a Hamas thing. Not that Iran didn't know about it, but but the quote unquote plan is looking much more like the plan was just to let Hamas do something. But if there is a quote unquote like larger regional plan, supposedly, then what I would imagine it as the best thing, like if I was planning for them, would be probably to try to expend as much as possible, as quickly as possible, to deplete the Iron Dome system and and exhaust it of all the spare stock munitions and ready stuff that the U.S. is also bringing in, so that it will be functionally ineffective, even if it will only be ineffective for like a few weeks window before like factory production of the Tamir interception missiles is brought up to wartime capacity, because that period of ineffectiveness would then be an open window for all the various militant groups, because Hamas isn't the only one, but like Hezbollah up in Lebanon, which has way more rockets than Hamas does, or variants of Al Qaeda and ISIL in Syria, could then just start bombarding everything and empty everything they have while the Iron Dome system is down. As of current, it has gone through what I call one full shedding of ammunition, because in total, all the launchers, all the different batteries combined at one time have about 1,200 Tamir interceptor missiles sitting in them. And whether every single individual launcher was expended, I don't know. But numbers wise, they have effectively now in the last week cycled through one entire ammunition shedding, meaning they've spent more than 1,200 Tamir interceptors because of the sheer amount of rockets that have been fired in. Now, granted, keep in mind the Iron Dome does not intercept everything. It does have very complex high end radar that tracks the rockets, calculates their trajectory. And if they're just going to land in like a random, nowhere spot, say up here in the hills where there's nobody around, just like some goats munching on grass or whatever, it will just let that rocket go. It will only intercept rockets if it thinks it's actually going to hit, actual cities or something. So in total, Hamas has fired about 7 to 8,000 rockets as of the moment, with intelligence estimates assuming before this all started that they had somewhere around 20 lying around. And that has gotten the Iron Dome to run through at least one expenditure complete of ammunition, so in excess of 1,200 Tamir interceptors. Now, the U.S. has about 2,000 spare Tamir interceptors, since we're the ones who actually manufacture them, sitting around to hand off to Israel at any given moment, of which we have been shipping them over as quick as we can since this started. We've sent one round of 300 so far that I'm aware of. So, again, I don't have access to what the actual numbers are, but I would imagine at minimum, Israel themselves probably has a similar extra 2,000 of their own, sitting around to reload things with. They probably have a lot higher number than that in terms of like spare Tamirs waiting around. But for like minimum estimates, I'm assuming that they also have a spare 2,000. So that would be another 4K Tamir interceptors to run through. And assuming, well, it had hit the full expenditure of 1,200 by this morning. However, there's been a lot of rocket attacks today, specifically around Ashkelon and Ashdod, and then some towards Beersheba. So that would have started off another expenditure round. So maybe we could say like 1,400 have been blown through. So 4,000 plus the initial 1,200 in the launchers would be like a total of 5,200. And again, that would be assuming that Israel only had a spare 2,000 excess ones lying around. So I would assume if there's an actual like diabolical plot behind everything, it would be to constantly overwhelm the system, try to get Israel to empty the Iron Dome as much as they can, then which would leave like an opening window, no matter how short, for other actors to then lob things into the country, like Hezbollah, for example. Unlike Hamas, who had 20,000 before this started, Hezbollah is at least estimated to have about 100,000 similar rockets. 99,000 now because they have fired about 1,000 since all this started. But that would be what I would assume like the actual plan would be, is just to make them deplete the Iron Dome system, spare ammunition included, and then just lob everything they have in and just try to cause a bunch of damage. Because I mean, there's not really that much else they could do. Like, especially, just referring to Hamas, Hezbollah, and Al Qaeda, there's like, if beyond that, once they actually like try anything like other than rockets, they're just going to get crushed. So there, I mean, other angles might be also like uh, the the sheer brutality of the attack, the and the like kind of response it's generating from Israel of, just going for it with the ethnic cleansing stuff. Yeah, that was probably intentional. And like the aim of that would be to like break off something that it has already succeeded at in just 1 week, break off all the friendly relations stuff that various Middle Eastern countries were starting to establish with Israel, and uh, like galvanize the surrounding regional population against them, which it has also kind of done, though not to the extent that they might have been hoping for. All right, hold on. My brain is breaking. I lost my thought collection. But yeah, so that would like, disrupt all the trade relation stuff that they were starting to develop, and would return it to, would forcibly like return them into more of an isolationist position, which would be a win in Tehran's eyes, would be enough of a win. But I highly doubt that they have any intention to like then try to turn the galvanization into like some kind of actual like further, especially ground action against Israel, because that's any chance of that's kind of been negated at this point. As there's now one U.S. carrier strike group sitting off the coast. There's about to be another. There is about to be they are much smaller, both the carrier and the quote unquote strike group around it. There's about to be one of Britain's two carrier groups, although again, by group, they mean three ships surrounding one regular carrier, not a super carrier like the US has, but a regular carrier. For anyone who's not aware, the difference between the two is a carrier can carry up to about 30 aircraft, but usually only has like 20 or 25, whereas a super carrier carries around 70 to 80 and is nuclear powered, so its range is effectively infinite. It doesn't have to constantly stop to park next to an oil tanker and get a fuel oil transfer. And the only other country on Earth besides the US that actually operates super carriers, legitimate super carriers, is France. Britain is Britain used to, but now they don't because they're cringe and trash. Now they just have regular carriers. Italy has actually no, I think they're down to just one regular carrier. India just has regular carriers. Russia on paper has a regular carrier, but it's always in maintenance and it never really goes anywhere. China has three carriers, but they're all just regular carriers. So it literally is just us and France who operate legitimate super carriers. Uh, and now there's a Marine Expeditionary Force that's also sitting off the coast of Israel. Normally, like yeah, thumbs up, Murica, concentration of a immeasurable strength is a cool Murica moment. Not in this case though, because it's there to potentially support an ethnic cleansing operation, or really to deter anyone else from trying to intervene to stop an ethnic cleansing operation. So that's the current alignment and setup of things as they're standing. Uh, whether Hezbollah up in Lebanon actually acts on their promise to like go all in if and when Israel actually like invades the Gaza Strip, I'd say 50-50 on whether they actually go in with it. Like I don't have enough like to show leaning one way or another, so I can't really give like a ruling on that at the moment. All right, blah blah blah. If I went, a power stack up. Okay. So, Israel has or had about 500 modernized Merkava tanks. Uh, Now they have 498 because they lost two of them. The U.S. has active in active service 2,500 of the Invincible Abrams. It also has 3,000 additional Abrams that are in immediate deployability storage, meaning that they are out of active like constant use, but they are maintained in a state to where they could immediately be combat operational within 48 hours to 1 week. And then on top of that, we have another 2,500 also that are like out in storage in the Sierra Desert area that could be combat serviceable within 1 to 2 months. So, in most immediate totality, we have about 5,500 Abrams, which are, again, effectively invincible in tank versus tank combat and versus infantry and versus anti tank munitions. Again, yes, you can take one out if you like land an artillery shell on top of it, or if like drop a JDAM on it. But the chance that you're actually going to do that is really low because we're the U.S. and we would have established air superiority before we actually sent ground forces in. So in immediate deployable totality, we have about 5,500 Abrams. Grand total summonable Abrams, about 8,000. Israel has about 500 or now 498 Merkava tanks. France has about 400 Leclerc tanks. The UK, even more pathetic, has about 200 Challenger tanks. Uh, Iran has about 1,000 ancient T-54s and T-55s, and then another, I think, 500 or 600 somewhat more modern-ish T-72s. Turkey has some more modern. They have like 300 or 400, I think, T-82s. Then they have a bunch of older like T-64s and T-55s. And who was it who actually gave them somewhat modern tanks, but they don't have that many. I think it's Leopards because uh, everyone everyone kept buying leopards because they were like the cheapest offer, and they have not too many of those, like 100 or something. Then I do not recall everybody else's numbers off the top of my head, but yeah. So you were specifically asking about tanks, so those are the numbers regarding tanks that I can give you. All right. Who else was saying something? Blah blah blah. Oh, you didn't. Okay, never mind. Well, you lost what few points I was willing to give you. Well, yeah, you've been shrinking yourselves, kind of really sad. Although you finally stopped. We've been begging you to stop shrinking yourselves, and you finally stopped. Now France started shrinking themselves, and we're begging them to stop. And now that everything is like really firing up for the last 5 years, or the last 10 years rather, we've been begging Germany and Japan to come back. Like we've been at each of their doorsteps saying like, "Come on, guys, we need you back." Just without the fascist genocide stuff this time, but we need you back. And Japan has answered our call and come back into existence. Their military, both in size and in combat capacity, has increased by about 40% over the last 10 years. And they are now operating for carriers, regular carriers, because only the US and France have super carriers. Germany will not come back though. You guys are still in a corner, curled up in a ball, rocking back and forth, crying about how you were such a bad boy. Yes, everybody knows you were a bad boy. Now shut up and get over yourself. We need you back. Poland, on the other hand, is being the Germany that we need. Polska, my precious Polska, is bulking up big time. They are really going for a whole, wind hussars resurgence in terms of adjusting their military strength to meet the current global situation. So thank you, Poland, for actually being useful, unlike the rest of Europe. Or except Norway. Norway's useful. Norway is awesome, but the rest of you guys highly questionable. All right. Well, except okay. Also, Albania. Albania gets a pass because Albania is just like hardcore, and tiny little Albania constantly stopping like massive Ottoman invasions by itself, while everybody else left it to die. And eventually, after a century of holding off the Ottoman stuff, eventually, yes, the Albanians got overran because everybody else was up here cowering and wouldn't try to help. And then when the Ottomans actually swept up through, it turned out everybody else just sucked, and the Wind Hussars had to come and save everybody at Vienna anyways. But that's beside the point for now. All right, so that's the most intense stuff we have thus far. We do have non-evil, non-depressing things that we can go through. First of which, Mexico is continuing their economic upsurge now that a lot of vehicle production that had previously been moved elsewhere is now moving back over to Mexico. Mexico's auto exports have now exceeded 300,000 units per month. And thanks to additional offshore stuff, their oil production is almost back up to 2 million barrels per day. And given the amount of and rate of addition of various things offshore in at least their portions of the Gulf that remain unexplored, the number that have been discovered and the rate at which they are going to be brought online should be enough to relatively keep them around a flat 2 million barrels per day for the next 5 to 10 years or so. Vietnam also continuing their rapid economic rise with more influxing good news. So, China, up to this point, has come to the position of manufacturing a lot of pharmaceuticals, particularly the generic like store brand versions of things like Tylenol and Motrin, or their actual chemical names, acetaminophen and ibuprofen, and various other common shelf medications. That is why I actually advise you to, for like shelf medications, for the most part, you actually should get the brand name one, because so much of the generic stuff is now made in China. So a bottle of acetaminophen, like store brand, versus that brand name Tylenol, actually has been found out to not be as effective because uh, the a lot of the factory operators in China not so discreetly, like dial down the mixture of actual, we'll say in this example, acetaminophen in the acetaminophen tablets, and add more and more regular like cellulose filler so that they can produce more pills with the same amount of acetaminophen, and thus they can bolster their numbers and improve their financial sheets when they report to Beijing. So, however, because of partially that, and partially because of the whole China situation itself that is coming about inevitably, the a lot of the pharmaceutical manufacturers for the generic stuff said that they're going to move their manufacturing elsewhere to somewhere more trustworthy. That place being Vietnam, as Vietnam has actually proven extremely reliable. And what was the other thing? Oh, yeah, okay. So also more on my ongoing list of the rise of Algeria economically. I forget which city it's being built in. I think it's in Oran over here. But you already knew because I already told you about the Fiat plant. The Italian automaker is now operating in Algeria. However, now also for the Mediterranean region, North Africa plus Europe, several models of Nissan are going to be made in Algeria, as Nissan is now building a auto factory in I'm pretty sure, the city of Oran. So now Nissans for the, or at least some specific models of Nissans for the Mediterranean region are going to be made in Algeria. What else? There were a few other things. And Algeria is going all in on public transit. There are now 7 cities. It used to, until semi-modern times, it used to primarily be just Algiers that had a wide-ranging public transit network. Now they're up to 7 of their primary cities have either a subway system or a surface street level tram system, or both in some cases. And an 8th city is now having a public transit, either a tram or a subway network constructed in it. And also, their whole steel industry thing is expanding. As I said, by the end of next year, they will officially be like a in the market steel producer, producing about 2 million tons per year. However, they've now also entered the market of being somewhat higher up the chain and producing steel products. So, uh, as of as of now, the 700,000 tons of steel that they're making per year are no longer being exported as just steel somewhere else to then be made into things. Its second stop is actually in Algeria to then be made into like actual steel products, which thus obviously then sell for more than just the raw steel itself does. So for consumers, obviously primarily in the Mediterranean economic region, Algeria is now actually producing the end products of steel wire, cold rolls, nails, screws, uh, rivets, nuts and bolts, fasteners, and stuff. So they're continuing to stack on, then beginning to drift away from the little bit of, happy-ish news that we had. We have combat flare-ups happening in Libya again between the West and East factions, as the election that's probably never going to happen is nearing. Some fighting resumed. It has stopped for the moment, but whether it goes full and we get like a production shutdown result from it, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see for that one. Another bit of I was right. Continuing here with Iraq. So I've told you guys multiple times that Iraq is effectively done playing by all the OPEC rules, and they're probably going to leave OPEC within like a decade or so because they're tired of constantly getting held back in their production levels on Saudi Arabia's orders. So they've been breaking the rules thus far. And they're supposed to be holding at 4 million barrels per day at the moment. However, they're breaking away from that and have been gradually bringing their production up higher than they're quote unquote supposed to. even though Saudi Arabia has told them repeatedly to quote unquote, get back in line and know your place. But now they're up to 4.15 million barrels per day, which they're, not supposed to be at. So I consider, casual rebellion like that to be the first indicative step towards their inevitable departure from the group. Uh, Qatar did similar stuff before they ended up leaving uh, back in the 2010s. So that's likely coming inevitably. Right, let me check chat and then chug some water. Uh, and yeah, everyone's leaving now that the Israel stuff is over. Uh, super chats? No. Okay. Uh, no, they will not be labeled made in China. Actually, that's one of the easier ways you can know if something was made in China is if it has no label telling you where it was made. Usually, that's because a manufacturer is trying to hide the fact that it was made in China. Basically, like anywhere else is going to tell you uh, stuff like medications that are made in India. Like they'll say they're made in India, even if they don't. A lot of like the prescription ones, the manufacturer will straight up have a blatantly Hindi name, or like with some of my medications, you can see uh, on the bottle it'll have like the address of the manufacturing facility, and it'll say that the manufacturing facility, like for one of my medications in particular, is in Ahmedabad in the state of Gujarat. But India like actually meets the standards and actually produces medication that is has a 95 to 100% concentration of what it's supposed to be, whereas with stuff like say acetaminophen coming out of China, we constantly find whenever we actually do investigate random shipments, we constantly find that like each pill only has like 40 to 60% of the acetaminophen that it's supposed to have, because like I said, they're just fluffing it with cellulose so that they can take a shipment of X amount of chemical acetaminophen from a chemical refiner that they purchase it from, and instead of purchasing that batch of the chemical and making you know 100 million pills out of it, they can make 150 million pills out of it and still sell them for the same amount of money. But all right, who else do we have here, or what else do we have? Oh yeah, the Azerbaijan and Armenia stuff. So the exodus of Nagorno-Karabakh is effectively complete at this time, and 136,000 out of 120,000 people left. And that sounds like it doesn't add up, and that's because at first glance it doesn't. However, there were 120,000 ethnic Armenians living in Nagorno Karabakh, basically all of whom have left, except for 1,000 like really old people who refuse to leave, and who the Azerbaijani government will probably actually leave alone because they're going to be dead in like 5 months anyways, because they're like 107. But also, 16,000 Azeris also left and fled to Armenia with the Armenians because they were friends with and or like married to or relatives to the Armenians there, and thusly, assume for one they want to be where the people that they want to be around are, and also even if they stayed, they're assuming they'd face some kind of reprisal from the Azeri government for not hating the Armenians that they lived around. And now we have been noticing forced concentration already on Azerbaijan's part around here and here on their border of the Armenian province of Syunik. So it is already looking like Azerbaijan is just moving to step two, like with no hesitation about it, and is getting ready to at least maybe they're not going to do full invasion this year. Maybe they're just going to do a defense probe, but it's looking like they're already going to try something with Sunik. And yes, as I've said repeatedly, they are going to, in the end, eventually try for it. Uh, Aliyev himself even said in that speech that all of Armenia belongs to Azerbaijan. So he wants all of Armenia. He's probably not dumb enough to actually try that, but absolutely, he's at least going to go for Sunik, maybe Vayots as well. And Erdogan over in Turkey is like fully behind him. Erdogan even gave a speech of his own uh, after Aliyev gave his villain speech. Erdogan gave one where he told the world, it would be only reasonable for Armenia to let Azerbaijan have Sunik and Vayots. It would be the reasonable thing to do. So he's fully for it. Azerbaijan obviously is fully for it because they're getting ready to do it. Uh, Whether they actually do it, at least in the immediate future of like the next few months, I don't know. If they actually enter Armenia, that is the line where Iran enters. And Iran has already pre-positioned a decent amount of force up there to be ready. And the moment Iran responds against Azerbaijan, that then pulls Turkey in to respond against Iran. Uh, Not really for the sake of protecting Azerbaijan, although they would do that anyways. Also, but like I've said many times, the actual reason for Turkey then coming in is just because Turkey wants any excuse, any pliable excuse to, in their eyes, finally take out Iran, who they view as their main like regional power threat. Uh, Even though Saudi Arabia tries to vie as a regional power, they're not really a power. They're just a family of rich people like sitting on an overexpensive yacht, and who bought a couple hundred F-15s to show how rich they are. But Turkey is waiting for any excuse to knock Iran out. So that looks like uh, it's going to end up being the means by which the whole Turkey-Iran thing, and that I was calling for that I was calling to happen later than this. I wasn't expecting things this soon, but everybody has been in a let's just go for it mood recently. Putin's just going for it. Aliyev is just going for it. Netanyahu's just going for it. Uh, Tajikistan, I don't know. They don't really have the strength to just go for it. They because Tajikistan claims Kyrgyzstan. They want Kyrgyzstan and want the Kyrgyz people dead. So they did try that last year. They did invade a portion of southwestern Kyrgyzstan. However, unfortunately for them, they ended up finding that they and their military and the Kyrgyzstani military are effectively equal to each other, which was not in Tajikistan's plan. That's not what they were thinking. They thought that they were going to be the more dominant force and would be able to like actually do some conquest. But it turns out that they and Kyrgyzstan are on equal footing and took basically equal casualties, both in men and in vehicles. So things didn't go the way they wanted over there. So now they're having to rethink their whole strategy. We all know China is going to just go for it with Taiwan. Uh, Modi over in India is on the verge of just going for it, but his is a bit different. there's no like foreign territory India's trying to grab back. What Modi's version of just going for it is wanting to purge India internally of all the non non culturally slash ethnically slash whatever his definition of Hindu is, because he's like a radical Hindu nationalist, and whatever fits into his moment to moment, changing every second definition of Hindu. Whatever falls outside of that, he wants to get rid of. That includes Sindh, that includes Punjabs, that includes Sikhs, that includes the people in Manipur over here, which is why uh, you've noticed that he's made no real response. He hasn't sent extra police forces. He hasn't sent military or National Guard to Manipur, where all those riots and ethnic killings have been happening, like against the people. He's kind of just like chillaxing and letting that go down because he figures, if he just lets them do that over there, they'll sort each other out and he can do whatever he wants later. The Myanmar junta is just going for it. They're losing though, thankfully. Uh, but they shut everything down. They've been just bombing towns and villages left and right. They're burning crop fields, thus decimating their own food production. They're burning crop fields with flamethrowers, in case there are rebels hiding in the crop fields, which there aren't. It's just an excuse to burn crop fields and starve the population. So the Myanmar junta is just going for it. However, again, they're losing, which is the one place where we can say the outcome is actually not going in the evil person's favor. Although things aren't going in Putin's favor either. I forgot about that, but it's not going in the Myanmar junta's favor either. Like the resistance has effectively taken control of this state and this state, and now also, as I told you guys last week, effectively all of this strip down here is now under the resistance's control. The junta's forces have been driven out of there. So yeah, they're getting pushed to the point of kind of running on fumes. So that's like one of the few good places as of the moment. Oh yeah, the Ethiopian government has already since 2020 has been just going for it. They already tried to kill everyone in Tigray via blockade, starvation, deprivation of medicine and food and water. They didn't eliminate all 6 million of the Tigray people. They only managed to starve 2 million of them to death. So there are still 4 million Tigray people alive, much to the annoyance of the governments in Addis Ababa. However, now they're spreading themselves thin rather rapidly because instead of focusing on Tigray, they're now also starting to run ethnic attacks in uh, Afar and Amara. Actually, no, I think that's Amara and that's Afar. So they're just going for it, and they are being really, really incompetent about it. Like they, like you can grant Putin the benefit of the doubt for believing, for Russia believing its own hype and thinking that it was actually as strong as it convinced the world that it was. But Ethiopia does not have that excuse. Like, you there's no way the Ethiopian government actually could think that it's somehow as strong as whatever deluded version of itself exists in its mind. But it's running into that reality now in the fact that it really can't compete with the militias of these three breakaway territories. Let's see. Was anybody else on the verge of just going for it? Oh, yes. Uganda. Uganda is just going for it. So Uganda has unofficially started invading northeastern Congo. These three provinces here have some ethnic minority groups that are effectively the same as the Ugandan people that Uganda, quote unquote, wants to protect, like Russia with the Russian speakers in the Donbass, and also uh, Uganda claims, at least, uh, that this section of the Congo is harboring an evil ethnic group that is, responsible for most of the terrorism attacks that Uganda has suffered in the past and suffers currently. So Uganda actually has quite a lot of military force. Not that it's impressive. It's literally, again, just jeeps and guys in camo with AK-47s and some RPGs. But they do have a sizable portion of their military force in the Congo, and the Congo's not really doing anything about it because the Congo can't, because the Congo's in a five-way civil war that they've been in since 1970. Uh, but Uganda is invading northeastern Congo both to protect the ethnic minority that they like and to hunt down the evil ethnic minority that they don't like. So we've got that going on as well. The Taliban also, man, there's a lot. The Taliban is trying to start a fight with everybody. Like they have shot up and launched attacks against the border posts with Pakistan, Iran, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. The only ones they haven't attacked are China, which I don't think they're stupid enough to do that. But then again, they're the Taliban, so I don't know. And Tajikistan. They haven't done Tajikistan yet. They probably will soon, though. And oh yeah, and Erdogan's just going for it with the his whole dream of Ottoman Empire restoration stuff. Like he's been having the Turkish Air Force bomb targets all over northern Syria, like well outside of the 20-mile deep zone of safety and pacification up here that he said was where they would operate. He's bombing all over the place and in northern Iraq. And they actually came really close to a place where there were U.S. forces, and we shot one of their nearly uh, unlockable by radar drones because their drones have proven very, very effective at not being able to be locked onto by air defense systems, especially by Russian ones at least. However, we shot one down the other day, and partly, I mean, they've done close stuff to us before, so I would think more than likely we kind of did this one like a bit out of the blue on purpose, just as a bit of a like doing the techno Viking point at them to remind them that we're not Russia and that unlike Russia, we actually can shoot their stuff down relatively easily. And since then, they have, you know, stopped dropping bombs that close to us. So the Techno Viking warning point seems to have worked for the time being. Check chat like a responsible streamer. Uh, oh, well, nothing new, anyways. Well, nothing new that requires immediate attention. No, no, thanks for answering it. Oh, it was about Iron Dome missile numbers. Yeah, again, in total, within launchers across the system, there are 1,200 Tamir interceptors at any given point. Uh, and a full round of 1,200 has been expended over the last week, probably close to 1,500 by now. The U.S. has about 2,000 sitting around ready to ship to Israel at a moment's notice, 300 of which have already been shipped since this started. And again, based on that, I would assume at minimum Israel would have another 2,000 of their own spare interceptors lying around. I would suspect, honestly, they would have several times more than that. but I don't have access to what the grand total is. That's not one of the areas where I have channels, not channels as in YouTube channels, but channels as in information access channels that I can find stuff out through. I have gotten myself a decent enough network across the globe that I can get stuff out of, but that's not one of the areas. The manufacturing rate for Tamir interceptors is about 500 a month when production is running. And obviously, once this started, production has since over the last week probably been restarted at the factories. So 500 a month. So if there was like some coordinated plan to try to like deplete the Iron Dome system to then allow for like a much more massive bombardment, uh, Hamas slash Hezbollah slash whoever else was acting with them would have to again unload a lot really rapidly early on to try to burn through as much of like the already in stock spare ammunition it has, and then uh, they would have to make sure they do enough to cost at least 500 or more interceptions per month after that to compete with the manufacturing rate of Tamir interceptors. All right, do we have anything else here? All right, we have that stuff. Oh, yeah, how could I forget? The larger of the ongoing conflicts. So, uh, stuff continues going with the Russia Ukraine fronts, and things have continued developing. So, Russia is primarily relying on the rail network running through for supply stuff, and it was, at least right here around Melitopol, or sorry, Melitopol's over here, it was just cut in several places, not by artillery or HIMARS strikes, but by actual SFO infiltrators getting behind lines and planting like actual cutting charges along the rails at several points, and literally cutting out segments of the railway around here somewhere. So that line is cut, and then also over here around Bakhmut in the Avdiivka area, Russia attempted an assault of sorts. So Russia sent several hundred vehicles, several dozen tanks, and several hundred armored vehicles to try to make a like push of their own, and it didn't go so well. I will not, partially because I can't, and partially because it's immoral. I will not show the actual videos of like destructions, rollovers, or deaths because it literally shows people's moment of death. But this was the front of a Russian column trying to begin their assault. This thing here is a deployed bridge by Russia. The military has vehicles like deployable bridge things, artificial bridges, or rapid deployment bridges. Well, it turns out Russia's the metal that they're made out of, Russia's ones at least. Turns out they didn't really make that stuff to the best of standards. And so, in several places that they tried using these, they were just like collapsing under the weight of the vehicles. And in this one in particular, uh, half of it failed and caused this. I don't remember whether this was an armored vehicle or whether it was a tank, but it like caused it to slide off to the side and it went like rolling and tumbling down into the lake. And then obviously the line of vehicles back here just stopped and couldn't continue the assault, and they were like frozen in place for like a minute or two, and then artillery and HIMARS strikes started landing on them and just causing them to blow up down the line. So that particular wing of the assault got wiped out pretty fast, but the Uh, but the initial point of failure has apparently been the quality of the steel used to make Russia's deployable bridging apparatuses. And okay, so we go back here. All right, so yeah, this was like the position of Avdiivka before. This was what Russia tried. They were trying these maneuvers to try to do an encirclement. However, it all fell apart and ended up back collapsing and resulted in Ukraine gaining ground instead. So the offense where Russia was trying to gain ground ended up resulting in letting their enemy gain ground instead, and also resulted in Russia losing a couple hundred more armored vehicles and several dozen additional tanks. So epic self-owning, and also at the same time, not because of what was happening over there, but just around the same time over the last 48 hours. This is the point of penetration of the primary Russian front line. With this general area around the dotted area here, or the dashed area, this was like the 2 mile deep minefield that I spoke about previously that Ukraine finally managed to get past. And then beyond that were the actual like trenches and Russian defensive lines, which they now managed to get past. There's one like semi line here, and then a scissor line set here that meet like this. And there's you can't see, but these go down and make like a circle down here. And beyond that, there's basically nothing because Russia doesn't do multi-layered defense apparently. So over the last 48 hours, we also had several punch outs. One getting towards and effectively reaching Verbove, one reaching out westward from Robotne. Uh, Partially, this one is just to draw some like fire and force concentration over here to make this one easier. With the primary aim here clearly being to get around this, and once they're like around that and out past this and past the circle, then that's kind of it, and they're kind of in. So that's gone down. Check my list. Is there anything else that I am forgetting? Oh yeah, some additional oil stuff. So Suriname, an additional discovery was made offshore of Suriname. Initially, everything that was already found was enough to bring Suriname up to 600,000 barrels per day over the course of the 2 to 3 years after first production starts, which will likely be in 2028. Now another discovery was made, which Total thinks they can bring online by 2030 to 2032, which will then bring Suriname's expected peak as of how things stand for the moment, barring any other future discoveries, to 800,000 within the 2030 to 2032 timeframe. And then Namibia down here, more stuff has been consolidated and thought through. And actually, we'll go to the Namibia one. Namibia, there we go. So this is the Namibia one, and this is the general area that's been explored down here in like the most southwestern part of their offshore area. And what's been found is enough to, if all three fields are brought online in succession really rapidly within like a 1 to 2 year period, they would surge up to about 800,000 barrels per day for a few years before then beginning to decline. And upon evaluation of everything, their startup date has been pushed forward by a couple of years up to most likely 2030 as the starting point, because they've reconsidered stuff and decided that instead of differential pipelines heading back to shore, it would be better to have it be an FSPO, a floating storage and offloading site instead of a like 300-kilometer long set of pipelines back to shore. So instead, they're going to do all the drilling and setup work for each of the fields, interconnect the wells, and then connect each of the three sets to each other, and then have of the spider web of flexible pipeline things set up to the ring underneath where the floating site will be. That's going to take a little bit longer, but ultimately, logistically, it will be the better option, especially given how far offshore it is. And that should result in first production in 2030. And because of how they're going to run that setup, all three fields will start up at once. So within 2030 slash probably by like the beginning of 2031, Namibia will surge up to 800,000 barrels per day of oil production, and that is only including the three fields that have been found in this searched area. That's not including anything else that gets found off Namibia's shelf between now and then. And I don't think there was that much else, unless anybody asks or says anything specific. So I'll check chat in a second. Let me refresh, see if there's any new. Nope, still from 2 hours ago. Right, yeah, I don't think there's going to be anything super immediate because it does look like Israel actually like listened partially to everyone telling them that it was a bit insane, and so it looks like they've probably postponed the Gaza invasion until Sunday, maybe. Not certain. So we'll end up seeing. It's nothing new in chat, anyways. No super chats either. Uh, Wait. What about on the first page? All right. First page looks basically done as well. At least there's some minor things, but I don't really care to go into them at the moment. All right, so I'll wait like a minute or two, see if anybody asks anything. If not, then that's probably going to be where we'll end this. And the data, well, we can check that again while I wait to see if anyone says anything. The data for the non-OPEC oil production levels has still not updated yet. And it's not just me telling you this now. You can see it for yourself. It's still on May. We're waiting for the June data. So it's still on May, so I can't make those videos yet. So you're gonna have to do with random non like regular scheduled content videos for the time being. I do have a controversial one coming soon about why Saudi Arabia funds terrorist organizations. So I've done not that particular subject matter in the past, but I have done things where I vaguely mentioned Saudi Arabia in the past, and I got a I got plenty of angry Saudis in the comments. So they are on YouTube. They're not absent like the citizenry of the other rich Persian Gulf nations are. So I'm sure I'll be encountering that again. It doesn't look like anything. I'll still wait a moment or two longer. They shut down. Oh, and I do thank everybody who's on my Patreon. We're up to $76 a month now. Well, I'm probably about to drop down to like 70 or 71 because I'm pretty sure the person I banned and blocked on Twitter was from here, and on Twitter was one of my $5 patrons, but I'm not positive. But yeah, here's the map. This is the map uh, of Patreon contributors, since I based the naming off of oil production levels. Like $1 to $4 is mild oil exporter. So like Ecuador, uh, $5 to $9 is a decent oil exporter. So like Brazil, and in some cases I put people exactly where they are. Like Wolfgang is from Brazil, so I made him Brazil. And then Guyana, since they're about to start up that third field and jump up to 500,000, is about to qualify as a decent oil exporter. Our newest patron, Mongo, I put them as Guyana. And then you have the $10 and above is Persian Gulf producer, of which we have three. And Alejandro got Saudi Arabia specifically just because he was the first one. But I do have that. And for if I somehow actually ever like filled in all of them, then I would have to switch over, open up like countries and start including gas exporters as well. Right. Nobody has anything, then that is going to be it. So thank you everybody for what the hmm? Oh, people did say stop. Appreciate all the work here, collecting related information for us. Why others don't build super carriers? Well, I mean, super carriers are expensive. They're not cheap. I mean, building one is about $6 to $10 billion. Maintaining each one is about $2 to $3 billion per year. So it's not exactly something that's cheap to do. I mean, they're definitive. They're inarguably better than a regular carrier, obviously, because their range and operating time is infinite. The only thing that limits them is food, and food is compact enough that that can be brought in on a really quick helicopter or a quick lander aircraft shipment onto and off of the carrier. And also, the fact of carrying like 70 to 80 aircraft versus a mere 25. But they are expensive. Like I said, cost to build one is like 6 to 10 billion. Maintaining one in operation is 2 to 3 billion a year in current dollars. So not that many other people actually really have the budget to do it. China could, but I wouldn't. They might be aware of their own problems with quality of stuff. So Beijing might not really be like all that willing to risk it. But I don't know. They uh they might try in the future if they end up not doing the Taiwan stuff and thus end up surviving in their current political form. India probably could construct and operate them just fine in the future once they're in a position to. All right. Thank you, everybody.